we had the big demonstration. How did you think it went?
I thought it went well. I mean, we haven't had one in the gallery like that before, and I was flattered with the crew that showed up to film me, and but more importantly, the crowd that came was alive, was good, and the crowd stayed steady. There were people that would come and go, but I enjoyed the banter with questions that came. They were just the right amount. You know, it was real good. I enjoyed it immensely, actually. You know, I paint what inspires me, and that's nothing new or unusual. That's what most artists, I assume, do. For me, the impact of a really good painting is capturing the center of interest. So I use the term negative painting. What's unique to watercolor is that the best use of the paper is to capture the white of the paper, and that requires painting around and leaving it, and then build midtones and darks that enhance that area that you've left unpainted, which is the brightest bright, and then touching it and charging it with pigment, and then what that does is that will dissolve into the watercolor paper, and it basically paints itself. That's the term that us watercolorists love to use, is painting by pigments flowing naturally on the paper. So regarding the pigments that I use, my travel kit, or my plein air paint kit, has 16 pigments, and generally I use about 6, and then some of the others are in there for special applications. The mixing of those pigments can happen on my palette, but most of the mixing happens actually on the wet watercolor sheet. Too much pre-mixing in your palette, you tend to muddy down the value of it. So I try to avoid doing too much pre-mixing, however some is generally required. And that is because, especially painting scenes in nature, natural tones of color that you see in nature are a mixture of colors. Some of it's from reflected light, but it's also the organic nature of materials in the wild, is that they're not all single colors, and they're not all bright primary colors. And a lot of students beginning show up with very smooth paper that doesn't have any texture to it. That's called hot press paper. And I use what's called cold press. So cold press has a roughness to the surface, so that when you're using a dry brush over it in a quick manner, it leaves white highlights.
Speaking about entertaining and visuals and eyes, you used a mirror in your demonstration.
Yes.
Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, that's a dilemma. Watercolor needs to be painted on a fairly low slope, although, you know, it can be tilted some. A mirror is a bit of an old school way to do it, but it's still quite useful, because recently I've used cameras and video monitors, and unless you're really high tech, you know, getting it calibrated for the right color, people are surprised that what you're painting and what they're seeing on a screen is really not true to the painting. Recently here on the island, I have been using a mirror that I built last year to do that. Now, so the surprise about that is when you're seeing that through the mirror, you're seeing it in reverse. So a lot of people come up at the end of the painting session and they go, oh, it's reversed. So, well, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, I realized, you know, I have so many paintings of just specific Vashon scenes that, and I don't see a hardbound book that is dedicated to artistic paintings of the island. And I thought, why not? I could do it at least for myself and for family and friends. But it seems to be popular, and there's a lot of them that have been sold over the last few years, so I keep reordering.
What do you enjoy about being here in the Swiftwater Gallery as a co-op?
Well, it's a great bunch of people, personalities. I just saw Martha in the grocery store a few minutes ago, and we stopped and talked about our art and about the past gallery show that we had, and it's a great variety. There's a lot of energy here, and the space is amazing for a cooperative gallery, I think. And you know, this island is all about art. When I moved here 10 years ago, I knew there were a lot of artists here. I had no idea that it was a center focus of this island, and so happy to be here.